Hey! There was movement around Australia, so gathered from far and near to listen to old mate Leon on the radio, loud and clear.
A Peninsula dairy farmer who supplies raw milk to South Australian families is appealing his criminal conviction for breaching food safety laws. Now the state's highest court will be asked to decide whether his cowshare program constitutes selling unpasteurised milk.
Despite a criminal conviction, it's business as usual for Mark Tyler.
Consumers want this product and they want to be able to access it safely.
Delivering raw milk to his customers, including father of four, Adam Oaten.
We feel better because we know that it's something that's organic and it's nutritious.
It's illegal to sell raw milk but not to drink it from your own cow, so the Wollonga Hill dairy farmer sold shares in his cows, then handed out the milk. But a magistrate ruled that was illegal too, a decision Mr Tyler is now fighting in the Supreme Court.
We've decided to appeal against the magistrate's decision.
He says as long as the demand for raw milk continues from his 600 shareholders, he'll continue to supply it and fight for a regulated raw milk industry.
We just want to see this legalised with a accredited system.
Australia is one of only 3 countries that bans the sale of unpasteurised milk. The state government has introduced to Parliament new regulations that would outlaw cowshare programs regardless of the outcome of Mr Tyler's appeal. But raw milk advocates have vowed to lobby MPs to vote against the changes to preserve their right to drink the product.
It's my choice to drink what I like. We've got people in Australia that smoke cigarettes and drink alcohol. No one's telling them to stop.
Kim Robertson, 9 News.
He spoke about a foreign invasion that's gone to the top job in the land. They're after our farms, our fish and our trees. So he called the resistance to stand. He spoke about God and what it means to be true blue. They could hardly believe his story. Are you fair dinkum and true? So put the billy on, Australia, and gather round that radio and come join the resistance. It's a fair dinkum radio show. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Thank you for joining us from wherever you are listening all around the world. My name is Leon Pittard and we are broadcasting from the land down under in Australia. Welcome to the Raw Food Resistance. Today, on Natural Health Radio, we discuss the raw milk raids with Mark Tyler in South Australia. In July 2013, I interviewed Mark following the raids by Biosecurity South Australia on his dairy farm. Moves in different states within Australia have been to outlaw dairies such as Mark's which allow shares in the dairy. So we are going to talk about raw food today, specifically raw milk. We will hear from David Gumpert during this hour. David is the author of several books. He's an investigative journalist who has looked at the way the FDA and the CDC in the United States and similar bodies in Australia and other countries are moving to outlaw everything that is natural in food, making it so that the bureaucracy must, in fact, endorse every single aspect of our food supply. Well, in Australia there is a raw food resistance, and I'm glad that I'm joined by one of the members of that resistance, Rebecca from the Raw Store in Melbourne. Rebecca, welcome along. Thank you for joining us.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me. It's really the best introduction I've ever received.
Well, you're in good company here because we love natural health and we advocate the best way for natural health is, of course, to eat food in its as natural state as possible. But Rebecca, please, let's spend a few minutes introducing yourself to our audience and tell us why you are passionate. You have the Raw Store. Tell us about your overall picture, how you got interested in natural health and what drives this passion.
Good question. I was really lucky, I suppose, to grow up in the country. And, we milked our house cow and the neighbours came round and shared in that milk. And, of course, it was raw milk. And, they collected eggs. And we had this really beautiful economy where it worked socially and economically. Everyone knew each other and that was brilliant. So that seemed really natural. And I was lucky that my parents really taught me the value of eating whole food. I mean, food is the only way in which we nourish our bodies. So it seems insane to me that it's not at the top of the list, of our government in terms of preventative health measures. So I guess I grew up, with revolutionary type parents as well, who were very resistant to this notion that we should buy food from a supermarket or be disconnected from where our food comes from. So I guess that really planted the seed. And I went off to university and forgot all about food and, did all the usual things. And it really was, I turned 40 and had an epiphany and just thought, gosh, life is too short to be doing things that don't make me happy. And so my husband and I started our little business, the raw store. And really our driver was, how do we make organic food more affordable for more people? Because it just seems really unfair that only reasonably wealthy people can afford to buy clean, nutritious whole food, and that for many people it's out of reach. And so that was really our starting point. And the other thing that really was important to me was local producers. So there's this growing need and understanding of food provenance, and people are starting to care about where their food comes from, which is fantastic. And it's my belief that the industrialized food system has really is responsible for us being so disconnected from our food, and many of our problems stem from that. And so a big part of what I'm doing now is trying to reestablish those connections between eaters and growers, and just make it an easy decision to buy local organic food.
Well, great work.
And so, of course,
Go ahead.
I was going to say, and of course, through all of that, I'm heavily involved in the local food movement. And in Victoria, we had what we all know about was the regulation change last year, and that really, to raw milk. And that's what spurred me on to start the Australian raw milk movement out of sheer frustration that this is just a step too far as I'm concerned.
Well, great work. Yeah, and I want to talk with you about the that movement that you did begin, because this is very important that the community push back. But what I like about what you've just told us, and what I can see on your website, is that you're trying to make this connection between people and food. See, today we've largely lost that as a society. Children aren't taught to grow food. They're not taught to milk cows or goats, and basically their food all comes packaged, sterilised, and in this cosmetic way, right? And I always talk about the food. The issues today is between natural health and a false scientific health. In other words, all the food that is in the supermarket aisles is apparently good for us, right? But when you look at it, the reason we eat is to feed our bodies, right? Now, a lot of that food is actually what I call dead food. When we look at the additives, the preservatives, the benzenoids, and all these things that are added to it, that food is actually not making people well. It's not restoring health. It's actually a very slow degenerative process when you're continually not eating fresh food but dead food. This is what brings about disease and dysfunction within humanity.
Oh, couldn't agree more. I mean, it shouldn't even be called food as far as I'm concerned. The vast majority of processed, manufactured food shouldn't even be allowed to be called food. And the government seems perfectly okay with food that kills us slowly. So that's safe. So it's pretty ridiculous.
Exactly right. Now let's talk a little bit about how you did mention it quickly, but let's talk a little bit more about how you got involved in the Australian Alliance for Raw Food, Raw Milk. Talk about how that started and how many people have sort of jumped on board to help you.
Yeah, so in my little raw food store business, one of the things that we were able to sell was raw milk, because at that time in Victoria we had this loophole in the current legislation, which was if raw milk was labelled as bath milk and not for human consumption, then we're allowed to sell it. Of course, we weren't allowed to talk about it openly, but of course anyone in the foodie circle, and then when I say foodie, I mean real foodie, circles, everyone knew that we were buying raw milk for bath milk for human consumption. And so I was actually stocking Mountain View milk, which is the milk that's been given a very, very hard time and been, had their brands smashed around publicly with zero evidence that the milk actually had anything to do with the illnesses of those children.
Yes.
And so out of frustration, I decided that's just not acceptable, and I started an online petition lobbying the government to reverse this decision. And in fact, my view was that raw milk needed to come out of the closet. It was no longer acceptable that we should have to secretly buy raw milk as bath milk like criminals. And it's actually time for raw milk to become legal. It's been, well over 10 years in Victoria that bath milk has been on the market. And so, 17,000 litres of milk have been going out to the Victorian public for over 10 years, and we don't have any recorded illnesses and deaths that are linked specifically to raw milk. So it's just been grossly exaggerated by the regulators, these dangers. And so that online petition gathered some momentum, and people, we had a meeting in January, and people came along, and they were concerned citizens, they were naturopaths, they were farmers. Mark and Helen Tyler came along from Adelaide to join us. And in that meeting, we were able to sort of set a direction, I suppose, about what we want to do and what we want to achieve. And the raw milk producers all got together and formed an association, which is a national association, and that's still sort of working its way at the moment, working its way through the system. And then we decided to call it the Australian Raw Milk Movement, which is, a consumer advocacy group. We're a bunch of concerned consumers and retailers and, raw milk foodies who just really care about our consumer rights, because let's face it, the government is very quickly eroding our rights on a number of levels, not just with raw milk.
Absolutely, and I mean, this is what we focus on here on this program, the way that culture has really changed. And let's go on with that, with speaking about Mountain View Dairy. And I witnessed, and I covered this on my broadcast when this happened, the gross injustice that was done to these people. And I'm just going to read a headline here, and this is the way the media pictures it. Now, this was from The Age. Toddler dies, 4 children seriously ill after drinking raw cow's milk. Now, I study these things and pick them apart, and I won't spend all that time on that today because I want you to be the one speaking today. But the way that headline reads, of course, it never read toddler dies, 4 children seriously ill after they've had their routine vaccinations. You know what I'm saying? It's just saying after they drank raw milk. Let's just have a listen to this clip, and we'll come back and talk about the way that they really set the agenda to try and put the guilt on the thing that they are trying to get rid of.
Health authorities are calling for urgent action to stop people drinking unpasteurised milk. A 3-year-old child died and 4 others fell ill in Victoria last month after drinking a product called bath milk. It's marketed as a cosmetic, but as Guy Stainer reports, most people who buy it drink it.
I'll just come in here and say, notice the call for urgency. Urgent action needed, right? Without any evidence. Without any evidence at all, but there was obviously, the agenda was clear.
Called bath milk. It's unpasteurised, and a 3-year-old child died after drinking it.
The child that passed away had a condition called hemolytic uremic syndrome, which is a complication of a bacterial gastroenteritis that affects the kidneys and the bloodstream.
4 other children under 5 have also become ill in recent weeks after drinking so-called raw milk.
It has the capacity to cause severe and significant illness.
Now, we'll leave that there, but Rebecca, there's just a typical example of how they plant the seed within the public's mind that the actual milk from a cow in its natural state was responsible. Now, I understand that Mountain View, they went through incredible pressure after this because, of course, all the media descended on them as a sort of naturally they're guilty sort of attitude. And, I mean, these people, they just completely were under siege. Now, up until then, I understand there's about 120 people that die every year as a result of food-related illnesses in Australia. And of those 120, it is not ascertained that one has died as a result of drinking raw milk. But this is the way the media has pitched it. And I just wonder if you could comment, Rebecca, on the way the narrative is always framed against things that are natural and always for things that have got a scientific stamp on them.
Well, I know. I mean, it's a pretty sad state of affairs, isn't it, when raw milk, when people are actually prepared to believe that raw milk is so very dangerous. I mean, that's what I find really incredible, the level of, groupthink or I think there are lots of people out there that question the media. Let's be fair. And it's just sensationalism, it sells papers. No one really wants to hear the facts. And I would hope that, most people don't rely on mainstream media for their information, but unfortunately, a lot of people do, and it does. In Victoria, we've had this hanging over us, and every time we have any kind of public rally, we have a drink in, and we drink raw milk in defiance, really. And the media are just so excited to see it because they think, oh my God, these people are drinking raw milk. How risque are they? And no one drops dead, no one gets sick, obviously. And it's just this, exaggeration. But in terms of facts around the case, if you listen to the health minister when she released her warning, they've always been very careful about what they say. It's the media that's very, had grabbed that story and irresponsibly gone off and ran with it because, we as in the Australian Raw Milk Movement endorsed or had someone who was a friend, and I say friend because she's a supporter of raw milk, who used to be an ex-health officer for the Department of Health. So her job when she worked for them was to investigate food poisoning incidents. And so we asked her if she would interview some of these parents and get to some facts. And what we discovered was that the child that passed away consumed the milk only once, and we know that because they were buying it from a co-op. So we have all this evidence of the purchasing, which the health department won't have and won't know that we have. And so that child died in October. So right there we've got some pretty suspicious facts. And the other children, the question that the Department of Health asks them when you're in the hospital and they give you a questionnaire when you've become, suffered from serious food poisoning. One of those questions is, have you consumed raw milk in the last 12 months? And so when they find that commonality, 12 months is ridiculous as well, yes, between 4 children, it's well, there you go, it must be the raw milk. Let's run that story. Let's not waste a crisis. That's my perspective. I know it sounds cynical, but it was very much a targeted, planned event. And unfortunately, Mountain View were on the end of it. It was them that really suffered. Obviously everyone's sad about a child that dies, but, it had nothing to do with raw milk, and it's never been established, not even vaguely established. The coroner hasn't even released their findings yet and won't be for some time. And even when the coroner does, the best that we can probably hope for is that it will be inconclusive. It will never be proven. But by then, the damage has been done by the media. So we are fighting an uphill battle in Victoria, particularly trying to get raw milk on the agenda. We've made some strides and things are moving along. We're getting some momentum, but it is tough when every time you turn the TV on, there's a story about raw milk. Mountain View brand is splashed around. And let me just tell you about Mountain View because I know them. I know Vicky Jones personally. I've known her for many years. I've been to that farm many, many times. I know the entire family, and I've been drinking that milk for years. So have my young children. And and that's the only brand of milk that I sold in my shop. So, not a single case of illness or sickness has ever been reported to me, and neither have I experienced it personally. In fact, quite the contrary, I've experienced nothing but good health as a result of having access to raw milk. And Vicky, she just takes sustainable farming up a notch. She does some really wonderful, ethical things on top of being an organic farmer that, it just makes it even more tragic that family's been scapegoated.
Exactly. And, something, this is another point that I think we need to talk about is that farmers that run dairies with farm share type projects and that realise that their milk is being consumed in its natural state must have their own quality control, quality care over the production of that milk because they know that it's going directly from the cow to the consumer, right, to the people. And whereas with highly processed dairies, and I've worked around dairies a fair bit in my life. Like yourself, I come off the land, and when I was young, I worked on a lot of dairies, and I've more recently, up till about 10 years ago, where some dairies were milking their cows 3 times a day. And I mean, this was just a complete mass production setup. And I know from being around those mass production dairies that there wasn't the same care that went into the production of that milk than what there is that goes into these farm share operations, where people are very particular about everything that those cattle are consuming, not just to get more litres, but it's actually more, and I get this from Mark too when I was speaking with him, it's more about caring for that flock, and it's a completely holistic view of what the farming is about. It is not about producing, a lot of milk. It is about producing this really quality food that people really enjoy. And when the consumer and the people that are part owners in those projects see that care, they want to be involved. In a lot of cases, they do get involved in the dairy. They're able to go and visit. In different cases, there's different situations. But what I'm saying is, it is a more careful food production process, because there is not those checks and balances saying, oh, well, the pasteurisation is going to kill anything that's a problem, right?
Well, absolutely. I mean, it really is the perfect sort of form of commerce where the farmer is selling direct to the consumer, because there's complete transparency. So if there are any problems, you can go direct to source and solve them. Very different to industrialised produced milk, where, as you say, it goes into a huge big vat mixed with milk from many, many farms, and it has to be pasteurised because it would pose a pretty serious threat to your health if you drank that raw. I think the other really important point that you made is that raw milk, safe raw milk, comes from healthy cows. And healthy cows eat grass primarily, and they live a life as a cow. They don't live the life of a, factory machine, like, being milked 4 times a day. They're out on pasture. They come in to be milked once, sometimes even twice, depending on the season. And they're not fed any chemical inputs, and they don't need to be given antibiotics because they don't get sick, because they're, leading a stress-free, relatively stress-free life, eating the food they should be eating. And that's what people, and particularly our regulators, would do well to really understand the difference between raw milk that is destined for pasteurisation versus raw milk that is destined to be drunk in its raw state. Yes. They're very different things, and fundamentally that is the problem that they haven't, or the issue they haven't really been able to get their head around in Victoria, because when they have done, I believe that Food Standards Australia and New Zealand conducted a risk assessment, and they took samples of raw milk and decided to test out some of these theories that, raw milk is inherently safe because it has a safety mechanism in it that the bacteria will eat the good bacteria will eat the bad bacteria. And they took this raw milk from conventional dairies and went, well, actually, no, that doesn't work. That's not happening. And they just failed to understand that all raw milk is not equal. Yes. And so we need to really, I think it's just an excellent point to keep making over and over to help people understand that it's, unless you're on a conventional farm and drinking milk straight from the vat, that's pretty safe. But other than that, I would really recommend that if you're going to drink raw milk, it comes from a boutique dairy, an organic farm where the farmer has taken great care in producing that milk and caring for those animals and nurturing the entire ecosystem.
Exactly. Well, there's a lot of farmers that wake up to this. In North Queensland, there's a Cleopatra milk bath, key to survival for North Queensland dairy farming. Now, here's a perfect example. A North Queensland dairy family have embraced raw cow's milk and are selling it as a beauty product as a way to overcome low milk prices. Yungala dairy farmers Dale and Paul Fortescue say they've been struggling with low prices offered by their milk processor and have had no option other than to diversify. And so it goes on saying basically they've gone into the Cleopatra bath milk product. Now, the point is that we know that bath milk is going all over the country and people are consuming it because they want the product, right? Now, no matter what the regulators try and do, the fact is people want raw milk. Now, what you've got this bureaucracy that's standing in the way saying, we are going to police everything. I mean, Look, I could read your headlines and you would be aware of them. Listen, this Vegemite is likely to be banned in Aboriginal communities. Now, can you believe this is the extent that they're going to, where they're going to use social security cards, where they can only buy what food or what they say you can have, right? Now, this is the problem with, I call it bureaucracy creep, where, and I notice on some of the rallies that you've been involved in, you've got signs holding up, we don't want the government in our kitchen, right? Now, this is the issue. We don't want the government involved in our life in every little aspect of what we choose to do. You know, whether we choose to drink raw milk or whether we choose to eat raw lettuce, grow our own food without Monsanto's influence in the garden. We don't want their white coats coming in to inspect us. Whereas in Queensland now, they've got, if you've got bananas in your backyard, you have to notify it and you have to be inspected. And if you don't get them inspected physically, the government will come and remove them. I mean, this is the tyranny we're heading to. And I believe that what you're fighting, the resistance you're fighting, but this is on the cutting edge. It must be resisted, because this comes down to the freedom of the individual human being to take responsibility for their own health and that of their children.
And that's right, and it's a constitutional right, I might add, for us to have the right over the food that we choose to consume. And, you know, people so often say to me, why do you care about raw milk? And, you know, there's two things. For me, it's incredibly beneficial for my health personally, because I have autoimmune issues, I've got asthma and lots of allergies. And raw milk treats those things incredibly effectively. And, and just general health. It's good for, you know, I mean, we're just really coming to understand about the benefits of good bacteria and gut health, and how good gut health really is the foundation for health. But the other issue that, you know, I say to people, if you don't care about raw milk, then, you know, eventually the government is going to brush up against something that you do care about. And if you don't take a stand now, you might find one day we don't have any consumer rights left. And it'll be too late. And that's the same thing I say about local food. You know, when you go to buy your food and you think, oh, it's so expensive to buy this or that, you know, or my local guy is more expensive than if I go to a supermarket. Well, you keep doing that, and one day you won't have any local food productions. The multinational companies will own and control our food system. Is that a world we want to live in? I don't think so. So it's a consumer rights issue as far as I'm concerned. I don't care if people don't care about raw milk. It's just we need to protect and resist this complete erosion of our rights, and I feel very passionately about that. And you look, you know, as you'd imagine, I'm an anti-vaccination mum, and I'm very anti lots of things that the government is.
Well, you're in good company here. You know. You're in good company here,
because right. And usually I probably wouldn't admit to those things in most radio interviews, but I know that I'm in good company here. So,
the thing is, this is a tip of the spear, right? That like you've said, raw milk. Now, let's say I've got a vegetable garden down here, and I grow my own organic food, right? And I want to bring that organic food to your store, right? When this raw milk thing is just one step. The next step is to stop trading with any fruit and vegetables to the public without certification. Do you get what I'm saying? So that if our mate Leon here, if I've got an excess of beetroot this month, which they're growing really well, or snow peas, and I want to take them to your store so that you can sell them to your people or use them in your restaurant, unless that product is certified, this is where I'm just forecasting where it's heading. This is why we've got to resist it, because unless that product is certified, it will not be allowed to be sold to the public. This is the point. And like you said, it doesn't matter if you're not interested in raw milk. The issue is food. It's about whether or not you can choose to trade with who you want, to eat what you want. Now, you know, the supermarkets and the fast food businesses, which are flooding every single country town everywhere, I mean, they're able to trade because they've got that stamp. The point is, if I know that your food's good and I want to buy it, I don't care about a stamp. I just want to buy it, right? And I don't want the government telling me I can't.
Well, that's right. I mean, it's just getting to the point of ridiculous where, as autonomous adults, I'm losing my ability to make my own decisions about the food that I eat. And I just think that, you know, if we don't start resisting this, where will it end? I mean, I just think that it's just a really slippery slope. I mean, the recent changes in the vaccination rules, where the government is really now, you know, openly trying to bribe parents by not allowing any parent that hasn't vaccinated their child to attend any childcare facility. I mean, that's a big change, and that's going to have a massive impact. And there'll be a lot of families out there that have parents and mothers and fathers that have to go to work, and they can't stay home until their children attend school, and they will be forced into vaccinating their children. And look, and then there'll be many people that will refuse it, and they'll find a way around it, or they'll just not go to work. But what is that doing to our society when we are forcing parents into these situations? I think it's a scary place. I personally find that terrifying.
Exactly right. Well, we should talk another time on vaccines, but I'm going to touch on this quickly. Just quickly, this week it only come out that the flu vax, and I've forecasted this anyway because I don't know. They said the flu vax has not been effective this year because it is a different strain, right, that people are getting. Now, anyone who's done their research knows that's the fact. They cannot predict what the exact strain is, and they're actually making it the year before. And they've come out and said, but there's still time, right? We've got this new batch that you can rush in and get. Now, anyone who trusts the health authorities on a lot of these issues, it's not hard to see how, completely hypocritical it is when they come out one minute and they say thimerosal doesn't cause autism, but we've taken it out because you're concerned about it. Now they said, we've put it back because it's not really an issue. So there's always these changes. There's a floating target all the time. But let's just touch on another aspect of raw milk, which you mentioned. I've got an article in front of me here, a new European study that proves raw milk protects children from respiratory infections, fever, and inflammation of the middle ear. I'll just read a quote here. The long-term study explored the role of dietary and environmental factors in developing allergic illness. The study began with 1,000 pregnant women who were asked to document their children's diet and health weekly for the first year of life. And it quotes in the article, among children who were fed fresh, unprocessed cow's milk, the incidence of head colds and other respiratory infections, fever and middle ear inflammation was found to be significantly lower than the group whose milk ration consisted of the commercially processed ultra-pasteurised product, says Dr. George Loss of Dr. von Horner's Hospital, who was the first author of the new paper. The effects of diverse milk treatments are presumably attributable to differential heat-resistant components in fresh milk. Compounds that are sensitive to heat seem to play a particular role in protection against respiratory tract and ear infections. So there is one study. There has been other studies that have shown higher levels of inflammation are related to the subsequent emergence of chronic conditions such as asthma and obesity. Consumption of unprocessed milk may therefore reduce the risk of developing asthma. So just a quick point there, Rebecca, that confirms really what your own personal experience has been with drinking natural milk.
Oh, absolutely. And it's not just people with allergies and asthma and, respiratory issues. As, I, through my work in the last sort of 6 months in the raw milk movement, I've been approached by a number of people who've got very serious health issues, digestive issues that I might add have been caused by conventional treatments and doctors, overprescribing antibiotics and other things that have just killed, their digestive abilities. And so there are lots of people out there that drink raw milk for therapeutic reasons, not because they want it, not because they enjoy the taste of it, not just because they like it and they're lefties and they think I should have it. There is actually a huge segment of a subculture even of people drinking raw milk because they need it. And that's what most people also don't understand, that it's just incredibly effective for a whole range of health issues. One thing I would like to add at this point, we've just finished a very comprehensive, it's 30 pages, lobbying document that the Australian Raw Milk Movement members have been, or, you know, a team has been working on this document for 6 months. It's just been finished. It's on you can download it from a link on our Facebook page. And we're very soon, this is really the document that has a really great background on raw milk, on benefits, on what's happened in Australia, what's going on in the rest of the world. It's really everything that you need to know before you go and visit your local MP, because now the work of lobbying has to start. I mean, it's political will that can change very easily and quickly the Food and Dairy Act to make raw milk legal, but they will not do it. They won't budge unless they think enough voters care about this issue. So I really, really call out to people to start, you know, going to see their MPs with this document. It's a fantastic document. It'll give you everything that you need and everything that they need to bring themselves up to speed on this issue.
And that's available on the Facebook page, Australian Alliance?
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
So you'll click on a link. It's loaded up there, so you'll see it easily, and it's hosted on a landing page, and our website's under construction at this point. So on an interim page, but yes, you can access it from the Australian Raw Milk Movement Facebook page.
Excellent. No, that's great work. And another thing that you mentioned there earlier, and I've got to touch on this. I'm trying not to sidetrack into vaccines, but just one thing that Scott Morrison actually spoke about, and I agree with this, is an economic sanction, if you like, on families in an endeavour to coerce their conscience. But one thing that really concerns me, Rebecca, about what Scott Morrison did while he was the minister was that he said that they removed, and he said they got all the churches together. Now, I would really, if I had the capacity, I'd like to contact all the churches and ask if this did take place and who was there and who said yes. But he said he got all the churches together and basically they have removed the conscientious objector ability for anyone, right? Now, before in Australia, we always had this understanding that someone could conscientiously object. I mean, there's been people that have been, for instance, called up into military service, which they've called conscientious objectors, so they become medics or, you know, some other aspect because they had a conscientious objection to killing people, right? But if we translate that into the vaccine, and by extension, I'm translating it into society and into food, right? If a government has the power to say that the individual does not have the conscience to make a decision about what the government is saying about their body, we're in a big problem, right? Because this is the opening wedge for the government saying, and I'm going a lot further, right? We own your children. If you're not going to take them to school because they're not vaccinated, we will take them, right? So this is the point. The point is removing conscientious objector status is a really big thing. And, you know, I've never heard it talked about, but I've seen it. I can see what's happening. And there's, like you said, this economic sanction to begin with, but the idea is really to mould the will to obey every government dictate, right?
Yeah, look, I'm equally upset about it. And in fact, you know, some days I think I should be spending more of my time, you know, actively resisting the vaccination issue. I mean, I do as well than raw milk. I just only have so many hours in a day.
But you can only do what you can do. I mean, you've got young children too, and I mean, all of us have to allocate our time to what we think we can do the best in the time we've got, right? So
that's right, and we just need more people to stand up and take some action because, again, like, you know, vaccination is a hugely important issue. And, you know, even, I mean, it's a bigger issue in lots of ways because, you know, there's a very real and imminent threat to putting poison into your child's body. Yes. You know, we have compensation boards set up because they know it's dangerous. They've never proven the safety of it. And as a parent, you know, when I looked into it 15 years ago when I had my first son who's never been vaccinated, and I just thought in good conscience, I cannot let them put that into his body and feel like I'm doing the right thing as a parent, knowing what I know. And you don't have to go very far to find information that's going to tell you how dangerous vaccination can be. And,
exactly.
You know, it really is a very scary step. And I'll be interested to see, you know, is this is this the thing that's going to get people outraged and get them to do something? But I went to a rally on this issue when it was first raised a few months ago about no pay, no jab.
Excellent.
No jab, no pay. And it was a pretty good turnout in Melbourne. I was surprised because vaccination is a highly emotive issue. You know, parents who are, you know, it's one of the issues, you know, more than anything else that really gets people fired up because they think, you know, you're putting my child at risk. This notion of safety is look, I mean, as parents, we all care about our children, so I understand it. But, you know, fundamentally, if vaccination works, then your kids are safe. Most kids aren't going to make your kids unwell if it actually works. I mean, if you really dig into the data, you'll see that most of the children that are getting these diseases are actually the vaccinated ones.
They are.
And
so, as we've covered here,
I mean, my son's had whooping cough, and, you know, I'm not scared of disease. Disease is like the muscles in your body. If you don't, you know, your immune system is the same. If you don't work it out, it doesn't get stronger.
Exactly. Well,
so there's nothing wrong with getting measles and chicken pox, and, you know, a healthy child with good sanitation and good food and loving parents will, you know, 99% of the time be able to fight that disease. I had it when I was a kid, and many people did. And it's, you know, really it's what turns, you know, this, people like to throw the old stat out about, you know, since we started vaccinating, these diseases dropped off. Actually, it's more to do with sanitation than anything else.
Exactly. You know, have a look at it. I just saw an excellent documentary the other day called, and I'm pretty sure this was the name of it, Just a Little Trace. And it was a recent documentary where a young man has documented his story from receiving a vaccine, becoming injured, and his, you know, path back to health over about 8 to 10 years. But he actually did a documentary about it. It cost him his marriage, his business, all sorts of different things happen. But he was talking about thimerosal and actually the vaccine that had thimerosal in it when he got it, and he didn't put the link together until later, but it actually really affected him. I'm pretty sure it's called Just a Little Trace. I'll try and find it and leave the link on our on this broadcast for our listeners to look at. But Rebecca, let's just go to David Gumpert for a moment. He's the author of 3 books concerning raw milk. He wrote the book, The Raw Milk Answer Book, another book called Life, Liberty and Pursuit of Food Rights, and The Raw Milk Revolution, Behind America's Emerging Battle over Food Rights. So I'll just play that clip now and we'll come back and talk about it. I'll hit pause and we'll just talk about it as we go through.
Versus fresh milk is an interesting distinction to make, and it's an important distinction to make because there's a tendency for people to hear the term raw milk and think, well, that's, you know, any milk that isn't pasteurized is raw milk, and technically that's true. But if you think about it a little more carefully, you realize that the milk that's unpasteurized but is produced by conventional farms, in other words, milk that's intended to be pasteurized, is a lot different from milk that is produced by dairies that intend to sell it and distribute it raw. And the reason is that milk that's produced by conventional farms, where they know it's going to be pasteurized, they know that they have some latitude in terms of sanitation and safety. They know that they can get away with certain things, as it were, because that milk is going to be zapped. It's going to be heated to 165 degrees, and that will kill off any potentially dangerous bacteria. The raw dairy farmers who are distributing the milk directly to consumers don't have that latitude, and so they tend to use much more stringent sanitation and safety procedures. They also tend to raise their animals differently than the conventional dairies. So you're getting usually milk from cows that have been fed grass. They've been on pasture, as opposed to conventional dairies where the cows have been in feedlots and they're just fed grain.
Now, there's a very good point, Rebecca, and just as we were speaking before, I remember when I was a young boy working in a dairy before pasteurisation, and when we used to get the bottles and the cream was still in the top, and I remember that we used to cleanse the cow's udder with a disinfectant before the cups went on. Now that doesn't take place. So what David has said is very important, because now most dairies through the processed dairy industry, it doesn't matter if there's fecal matter or anything else on the teeth, because after all, it's blasted to get rid of any bacteria, right?
That's right.
And so his point was more care, as we spoke earlier, more care goes into the cow share programs and the people that own the dairies that are producing milk that is going to be drank in a natural state.
That's right. I mean, I've been out to Mountain View's farm and watched when they were doing the milking. And, you know, each cow's udder was cleaned by hand, dried. And, you know, this is at least adds 30 minutes, if not more, to the process of milking. Yeah. And these cows, they stand there. They don't need to be fed anything. Most cows are fed some grain when they come in. You know, their cows, they're 100% grass-fed. They don't get any supplementation by grain at all. And the cows just stand there happily. They're calm. They come in by themselves. I mean, it's truly a wonderful thing to watch. Conversely, if you went to an industrial dairy, that would be a very different picture. Exactly. And I know because I've seen that too.
Exactly. Let's go on.
That cows that are raised on grass are producing milk that isn't necessarily safer, but they're producing milk that has a more favorable nutritional makeup. In other words, it has better quality fats. It has more conjugate linoleic acid and other nutrients that are beneficial. Now, there has, I think it's worth pointing out, there has been assumptions that cows that are raised on pasture are not going to be able to produce milk that has pathogens. In other words, the pastured milk, the good bacteria somehow overwhelm the bad bacteria that might be in the milk. And I wouldn't call that an old wives' tale, but it was certainly a lot of people that word got around a few years back because of some very limited research that suggested it. But it's been shown in a number of situations to not be the case. In other words, milk that comes from grass-fed cows has, on a few occasions, been shown to contain pathogens. And what that says is really that the farmers who are producing that milk can't just rely on the fact that it's that their cows are grass-fed to ensure safety. They have to take other steps to make sure that that the cows are healthy and that their barns and their milk rooms are sanitized so that the milk.
Now, just a point on that, Rebecca, which I've noticed that most industrial dairies only think about two components. That's fat content and protein. And the dairy is basically run on that. Third thing is litres, the amount. Okay, so quantity, protein content and fat, because the co-ops or the dairy factories pay them according to protein content and fat content. And so these things are adjusted by different food and supplements that are given to them. But what David mentioned there is very important, and you would have probably a lot more knowledge on this than what I would, and that is that when we are speaking about drinking natural milk, there is a lot more that we're really looking for than just fat and protein, right? There's all of these other enzymes, bacteria, which are actually put in later today in products like yogurts, but are in naturally in the milk, right? And this is the thing that the heat processing and the homogenisation actually destroys. It takes away all of these extra goodies, which is what the natural milk drinker is looking for, right?
Mm-hmm. That's right. And the other point to make is that pasteurization and homogenization are actually denaturing the milk. So not only are they impacting the nutritional content of the milk by destroying the enzymes and bacteria, it's also rendering it impossible for humans to digest it. It's processed it to a point of indigestibility. So there's a whole theory around this growing incidence of lactose intolerance. But actually what we're finding is that people that think they're lactose intolerant can actually tolerate raw milk quite easily. So it's actually, the fact is that it's not that people are lactose intolerant, it's that they are pasteurised milk intolerant. Because when you think about it, it's completely unnatural. You know, our bodies do not like processed food. It's not natural. It's not food anymore. And that's the thing that people don't realise. The dairy industry has actually done a really great job, a great marketing job on Australia by putting, cows on pasture and, this beautiful clean white milk and saying it's so healthy and wholesome. But actually it's a processed food that our bodies don't recognise and cannot digest. And that's the thing that, gets lost in this debate as well. That it's not just about, it being natural and better for us. It's impossible to actually digest pasteurised milk.
When you look at a glass of natural milk with no additives, that's what it is. It's straight from nature, right? When you go to a shop and buy something that's been processed, look at the amount of additives and preservatives that's added to it, and the numbers, a complete list of ingredients. And what we've always spoke about is this process, this industrial process of interfering with nature and taking food from the natural state and really cooking it, cutting it up, ultra heating it, putting things back in, taking things out. This is actually destroying the natural enzymes and the natural ingredients that our Creator has put in that food, which aid in our digestion, right? Which aid in the cells in our body being able to uptake all of that goodness to restore good health. But when it is processed and industrialised, it actually takes out the very ingredients that have been put in there to help us digest it.
That's right, and it's no surprise that we have, rising incidence of autoimmune diseases and lifestyle diseases. It's the food that we're eating, and I think finally we're starting to realise and make these connections. I'm very big on no refined sugar as well, because I think sugar is a perfectly legalised poison that has just permeated processed food. And again, I don't eat processed food, and when I do process it, I process it myself very minimally. But the vast majority of people out there are eating these foods and not realising that they're slowly poisoning themselves. And so really, I think it's crazy that the government, they're spending all these health dollars on treating diseases and, all this sort of Band-Aid treatment, when really we should be getting to the crux of it and going, hang on a minute, we should really, if we just change the food that we eat and change the systems in which we produce and sell food, we'd be halfway there to solving many of our health issues.
Absolutely. Now, I know that your children are coming home soon, so I'm not going to hold you up much longer. But let's just finish off our conversation with direct our listeners to any resources you would like to direct them to, websites, etc. I will put links up for whatever you give us. And any other events. I notice that you've got a Fair Food Week coming up in October. Any other events you might like to mention into the future?
Yeah, so I think the best thing that people can do if they want to get behind the raw milk movement, and really when I say that I mean when you want to stand up and protect your consumer rights, go to the Australian Raw Milk Movement Facebook page, download our briefing document or our lobbying document, take that for a meeting with your local MP and start demanding our politicians change the regulations so that we can get access to raw milk and other untainted whole foods. We will be actually having an event in Melbourne soon-ish to help educate people on how you go about using this lobbying document and, just a bit of 101 on how to lobby a local member of parliament. So keep an eye on our Facebook page for more details.
Well, great work, and what I'd like to close with is, ladies and gentlemen, do everything you can to grow your own food. Develop a garden, and you can never grow too much food. You can always share it with your family, with your neighbours. We work in a big garden here. The idea is to grow much more than what we need, and we give it away to people, that which we don't consume ourselves, and you can learn how to preserve and how to actually, keep food during the winter months, during the summer months, whatever foods aren't in season. But Rebecca, I want to thank you for joining us on Natural Health Radio today. I wish you all the best. I thank you for all the work that you're doing. And we'll have to do this again. I enjoyed it.
Thanks, Leon. It's been a pleasure.
Peninsula dairy farmer who supplies raw milk to South Australian families is appealing his criminal conviction for breaching food safety laws. Now the state's highest court will be asked to decide whether his cowshare program constitutes selling unpasteurised milk.
Despite a criminal conviction, it's business as usual for Mark Tyler.
Consumers want this product and they want to be able to access it safely.
Delivering raw milk to his customers, including father of four, Adam Oaten.
We feel better because we know that it's something that's organic and it's nutritious.
It's illegal to sell raw milk but not to drink it from your own cow, so the Wollonga Hill dairy farmer sold shares in his cows, then handed out the milk. But a magistrate ruled that was illegal too, a decision Mr Tyler is now fighting in the Supreme Court.
We've decided to appeal against the magistrate's decision.
He says as long as the demand for raw milk continues from his 600 shareholders, he'll continue to supply it and fight for a regulated raw milk industry.
We just want to see this legalised with a accredited system.
Australia is one of only 3 countries that bans the sale of unpasteurised milk. The state government has introduced to Parliament new regulations that would outlaw cowshare programs regardless of the outcome of Mr Tyler's appeal. But raw milk advocates have vowed to lobby MPs to vote against the changes to preserve their right to drink the product.
It's my choice to drink what I like. We've got people in Australia that smoke cigarettes and drink alcohol. No one's telling them to stop.
Kim Robertson, 9 News.